Hey, Will Levis is the favorite now to go to the Texans overall. That's what Vegas says. And I know a bunch of you are super, super stoked about that. Listen, there's nothing to be scared about as long as you just watch highlights, which I highly encourage everybody to do as soon as the draft is over. Just watch highlights of all these guys, especially Will Levis, because in a word, Will Levis is erratic. Erratic is the word. I'm Seth Payne, former Houston Texan, played 10 years in the NFL. If you like what you see today, please subscribe. And also on the live stream, let me know if the audio levels are messed up, as they tend to be like 40% of the time. I'm going to start off with some of the positives of Will Levis, because a lot of you know I'm very much a Will Levis skeptic. I do think his highlights are impressive, and we'll show some of those. And I'm going to show Kurt Warner, various other quarterbacks, former NFL quarterbacks, tell us exactly about Will Levis. Warner is probably the most level-headed and non-hot takey of all these guys, but just to give a little bit of a halo effect to Will Levis, lest you hate him, remember, the Mannings have said nice things about him in the past. This is him talking to Archie Manning. This was on their website. What is it? On the Clock, on their TV show that they're following several of the draft prospects around. So this is on the TV show On the Clock, but it's from the Manning Passing Academy. This is something that intrigues me in terms of Levis potentially being a Kubshanistani quarterback, somebody from the Kubiak-Shanahan scheme.
Unsure on that play fake. Let's get that offhand inside and really try to get an extension with that left hand in the running back's gut.
Tell me what you were telling them about the play fake. You say you learned something from Payne?
It was a documentary or something where Payton was just talking about how he would tirelessly watch his film of what they're running their wide zone and their waggle and their outside zone play action, how he was set go! Wanted to emulate it and make it as side-by-side parallel as possible.
I've always been amazed at people that are bad fakers. They just don't pay attention. You know,
common sense,
who do you think you're fooling?
Yeah. Who do you think you're fooling? That's what they say. Look, I like that Will Levis pays attention to those details. There are excuses you can make for him, and we're going to hear a couple of those from Orlovsky. Orlovsky's really doubling down on his love for Will Levis, but that is one thing that's always bothered me about some guys trying to run a Kubshanistani offense, is that the play action is essential. And the fact that Levis, I've watched various interviews with him, he is a student of the game, which might make you nervous about why his mechanics are as sloppy as they are, but it is something that he's at least conscious of. Kurt Warner, my God, did I say Kurt Warner? Kurt Warner also has some very positive things to say about him. He'll have some criticisms too along the way, but this is him talking about one of the most glaringly obvious things about Will Levis.
Knowing how good Georgia is defensively, and we talked about the big arm.
This is obviously Will Levis versus Georgia.
All right, here's a look. Effortless. Throwing from the backside hash about as far as you can throw, farther than you're going to have to throw a go route in the NFL.
Oh, yeah. So we cut off that little bit. Look, as far as he's saying farther than you have to throw in the NFL, yeah, like some of these throws that he's making from the opposite hash because the hashes are wider, the ball comes out of his hand very, very nicely, and he does it very easily. Like, he's an easy thrower of the football, which some guys look like they're labor at it. I think that CJ Stroud looks more methodical in the way he throws a ball. So it does catch people's eye. Just the natural talent that he has. It's just all the other stuff that needs to be cleaned up. He's working with Jordan Palmer, and the connection to Josh Allen, I think it's just too easy. And Josh Allen's one of the few quarterbacks in the NFL who has cleaned up his mechanical issues and his accuracy. And it's not like Will Levis is woefully inaccurate. He's got a 65% completion percentage in his career. It's just that when he's inaccurate, it's very curiously bad. It's at all the wrong moments, and some of the decisions he makes in taking sacks or turning the ball over aren't so great either. One more positive before we get into the nitty gritty. Kyle Allen, former Houston Texans legend and notable Coug and Aggie. He's a Cougie. He points out something on his podcast about what it looks like when Will Levis's footwork is actually correct.
This is something we worked on a lot over the past 4 years. Moving from platform, when I say from platform, moving from your stationary spot in the pocket, being able to get back off platform.
So if you watch his footwork and just watch, he's moving in the pocket, he stops, he plants his feet. Like, this is what it looks like when he does things the right way.
Back on platform, making the throw across the field. Like, that's an impressive ass throw, dude.
Yeah, with a nice little smile by Kyle Allen there. Kyle Allen's podcast or his YouTube channel, which he does, he has Jordan Palmer on there a lot. He's been working with Jordan Palmer too. For those of you who want to look at the yin and the yang of like, okay, not every guy that these quarterback gurus work with make this magical transformation, but Kyle Allen's actually really good on that show. I'll link it below. Is Ben Solak with The Ringer does a good job of breaking down some of this stuff that you're going to hear me and others talk about. But he started off, when I started watching the breakdown he did on The Ringer, I got a little bit intrigued by some of the comps he made.
Levis has this beautiful compact release that allows him to get the ball out even a tick faster than it would originally seem because of how quickly his throwing motion just, boom, gets that thing out of there. It's reminiscent of a Jimmy Garoppolo and Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, all guys who have succeeded in this play action style, Rams, McVay, Shanahan inspired approach.
Okay, we call it Kubshanistan around here, Ben, but we'll let that slide. Look, Kirk Cousins, Jimmy Garoppolo, those don't really get your football panties wet, but I would totally keep the Aaron Rodgers in his prime tab open, especially the MVPs he garnered after really absorbing the Kubshanistani offense. Garoppolo, too, is, look, I guess with Garoppolo, the thing that I would worry about in making a comp with him and Will Levis is that they already share too many of the positives and negatives. Garoppolo, man, when you watch him throw it, you're like, oh, wow, that's really something nice. I remember watching him in training camp with the Texans up in West Virginia and thinking that. But then the first time I saw him play the Texans, ironically enough, when the Texans were bad, it was one of his first games with the 49ers. And I thought, man, he was lucky not to throw 4 picks in that game. And Will Levis gives you that same sense. You can see that untapped potential. But now in Garoppolo played well enough to win a Super Bowl in that Super Bowl they were in. So that's not the worst thing in the world if that were to be that. Ben, who else do you have, Ben, in terms of comparisons?
There's another name that gets brought up a lot for Will Levis, and that's Carson Wentz.
Oh!
When we're talking about Carson Wentz, we're not talking about the upper half mechanics.
Oh!
We're talking about the lower half mechanics.
Completely limp. Just no excitement there whatsoever. The lower body mechanics are a big part of it. And the inconsistency, if I'm going to blame him, and if the Texans, if I'm going to give him an excuse, and if the Texans draft Will Levis, I'm going to try to talk myself into this excuse. It's that part of the reason his football is his footwork is erratic, like my language is erratic. One of the reasons that his footwork is erratic is that the offensive line is it's so bad, and that the offense that he was working in with Rich Scangarello, a lot of people aren't a fan of Rich Scangarello, and even though he's trying to run somewhat of a Kubshanistani system, there seemed to be a lot of confusion, mental errors by either the receivers or the quarterback. But here's Kurt Warner. Jesus, Kurt Warner. It's been a long day, everybody. Kurt Warner talking about some of these mechanical issues.
Issues with Will Levis, recognizing things, especially quickly with pressure, and then his accuracy. His physical technique throwing the football kind of gets him off a little bit.
It's gets him off base or off platform a little bit. And Ben does a good job of showing exactly what he means here. Now, I got to tell you, too, Warner does a 2-part series on these guys on his YouTube channel, and usually he goes over the positives in the first video, then he goes over the negatives or the criticisms or the items to work on in the second video. And in this one, he couldn't help himself. At the end of the first video, he basically went into all the criticisms he had for Will Levis and he was trying to be polite as possible, but you could see the upside and he could see all these good things that he does, but he's just nervous about some of these negatives. Ben did a good job of showing exactly where the footwork breaks down. I cut this up a little bit. If you go to The Ringer and watch Ben's video, he does like 25 minutes on each of these guys. Really good breakdowns.
Now, he goes to get into his drop back. He has that huge first step, right? And now watch the front leg. Watch where it ends up. Bang. And you'll see when we run this, watch his knee buckle. Watch the front knee. See that knee just like buckle? Because he's trying to bring his hips all the way through and he can't rotate like that. You're locking yourself in place.
So you see that a lot. You see him either, kind of closing himself off by not taking a full step or not stepping in the direction or opening up of where he's going to go. Sometimes with like a hurried motion. And it's weird because it's different. You see that in college quarterbacks a lot. And a lot of times it's when they're feeling hurried. With him, there doesn't always seem to be a reason for it, like right there. He does figure out a way to do it in a muddy pocket at times. It's not like he's incapable of. Here's an example.
You're gonna like this. Look at him get the feet set, right? Enough room this time for the hips to come around. He still kind of locks himself.
And you see, like, there's enough room for his hips to come around because he took that step, but that's with that center or guard getting driven into his lap there.
Out with that toe, right? You see how this toe is still pointed like this way, and it pulls him to his right a little bit, right? You can see how he kind of leans over, and that arm comes away from the body. But man, that arm snaps around, and it helps him get the ball out really fast.
Yeah, and Ben is like, he's very nitpicky even on the positive. He's like a very good coach. That he's extreme nitpicker to where even after you have an awesome play, he's going to sit down and tell you 18 things that were wrong with it. But like that's the part right there where I think coaches or anybody else starts to look at him and think, okay, well, like if you take him in different circumstances, perhaps a different offensive coordinator, maybe Bobby Slowik himself feels something about this, then maybe they'll be all right. It was interesting to me that Ben thought that Levis's release was a plus. Chris Sims not high on.
It's a very floppy release with his arm. His feet are all over, like I talked about. And then there's just those plays that you guys know as a quarterback where, hey, it's not perfect and you're moving in the pocket and, hey, there's somebody open and you got a little room and he's open and, just get it done.
Yeah. So the erratic throwing does also come with sometimes when he's making these curious decisions. And again, people will make excuses for him, and I'm inclined to make excuses for him because he was in such a bad situation in terms of his offensive line, his wide receivers, and yet he also makes these bad decisions or curious decisions when everything is okay around him. And that's why I went and watched like 12 different NFL quarterbacks evaluate him, because I'm watching and I'm pretty sure I know what the read is or where he's supposed to be going generally, and it just doesn't look right. But quarterbacks are very careful not to criticize when they don't know what the reads are. This is what Kurt Warner thought of one particular play.
Double hitches on both sides. Pick a side, pretty much even. Pick a side, okay? Looks to the left, right? We got 2-on-1. Throw it, okay? Went to the right. This guy's tucked in here. Throw it. We've got throws all over the place right here, especially down in your end zone. I don't know why he's looking inside first.
Yeah, so and you see that as a consistent theme with all of those guys. I've watched maybe like 4 or 5 hours of various quarterbacks breaking down Will Levis, and they're always trying to be polite, but you can almost see them struggle with, okay, do they criticize Rich Scangarello, the offensive coordinator who was fired at the end of the season? Are they going to criticize his reads, even though they don't quite know what the reads are? But there are a lot of the guys that played in this type of system, same terminology, same concepts, that don't quite get it. So I do wonder, I mean, the other day on Payne and Pendergast in the morning, Nick Caserio told us that they'd had a prospect that came through and was criticizing his coaches, and it really turned a lot of the personnel off. I don't think Caserio would have told that story if it was somebody as important as a quarterback, but I could totally see it being Will Levis, and I don't know if it'd be good or bad. I'm very confused about all of this. Steve Smith, who's also doing a great job, he does his YouTube stuff on Underdog. He's doing a lot of talent breakdown this year. He's not one bit a fan of Will Levis, and he's got some technical criticisms and then one very interesting one here.
I know this probably doesn't go well. I just don't trust a quarterback with those kind of guns. Man, when you got the gun show going on and you're overthrowing and not taking care of your business, that means your perspective is a little skewed. What you hide? You're too worried about the gun show. You're insecure. You're doing selfies in the mirror. You're telling me something. You don't see Joe Burrow flexing, doing a selfie of his gun show in his bathroom.
There's one Joe Burrow selfie specifically that's very fun. He's got the LeBron jersey on, and it's too small for him. But he was in high school. Like, he's not showing off the guns.
Joey B can do no wrong in my eyes.
That was James Palmer jumping in at the end there. James Palmer, by the way, in that same channel said that a lot of teams have a round 2 grade on Will Levis. And when James says a lot, like he talks to everybody. So, or he said several, maybe he said somewhere between several and a lot. It was definitely more than one. So it's there's a definite possibility the Texans see him as more than a number 2 overall pick. I don't know. I guess if you're convinced that a quarterback from Ohio State can't do well, so that's why you don't want to draft CJ Stroud, then by all means, ignore the fact that Joe Burrow started off at Ohio State. If Joe Burrow had stayed at Ohio State and won the starting job, he would have been an awful NFL quarterback. That's all I know about Joe Burrow. As far as the not trusting anybody that goes to the gun show, I don't know, man. Things have changed. Steve Smith Sr. It's different than it was back in our day. These kids, they're not ashamed to take the selfies. Plus, I think he was doing that as some kind of a promotion. Not that I'm super stoked about that. Here's Dan Orlovsky doing his best to make a passionate, scowl-faced defense of Will Levis.
2 notes that I write down, unfortunately for Will Levis more than anything, when I'm watching his tape, no one's open and he's got no protection. Ooh. Now, one of the complaints I've heard from basically everybody was they don't like some of the decision making. And I would attribute a lot of that decision making to be circumstantial.
Yeah. And by circumstantial, he means just the being down with 3rd and long, or you've got a bad offensive line. And with that bad offensive line, it was guys getting beat immediately to the point where you could see where maybe the clock in his head was a little bit broken. The problem with that is I do think sometimes guys' clocks are broken irreparably. And I think David Carr, I always thought, as a player, I played with David Carr. I thought he had a lot of potential, except that I think the clock in his head was permanently damaged. Your brain's not done maturing until you're 25 years old. I think these guys get knocked in the noggin a few times, and that's it. They're 3 grains of sand short of the full hourglass. So I'm not completely and totally buying it, especially because then Orlovsky showed a play where Levis made a decision that Orlovsky defended, but then it was a horrible throw for an interception. So I don't quite get that. One other thing. Here's another positive. And again, the stuff that Levis does really well. Stress. Sorry, I see this. I got distracted by the Seth. I share your stress. The stuff that he does well does look like it would transfer into this Bobby Slowick, Kyle Shanahan, Gary Kubiak type of offense. He's very athletic, and when he knows where he's going with the ball, it comes out pretty well.
Something else that he's good at, what I call a pick and stick. Play action and then find the window and stick it into some of these tight windows. Boom, right here. Nice job. Beat the safety with the throw. Wrap it right around that linebacker. I like it.
Yeah, and look, there are a lot of those things. Again, if the Texans draft Will Levis, I'm not convinced by the odds changing. Although I know last year this time, Derek Stingley, his odds shot up on Monday or Tuesday, and I played Joe Skeptic because it's always fun to say I told you so afterwards. And I didn't like Derek Stingley's injury history, but I was proven wrong on that, on the first part, the odds part. So it's inside 1 week to the draft. Does Vegas know something, or are they just responding to a talking head on TV? I don't know. Or are they? I guess if the betting public was responding to a talking head on TV. As Yarden Haddad says, yes, Levis does have all the tools. It's just a matter of, okay, so did Josh Allen. I worry that people are talking themselves into Will Levis because Josh Allen did it once. And it's not as simple as that. That's survivor bias. It didn't work 100 times, but the 101st time it works. You take an erratic quarterback. And Levis is not as erratic as Josh Allen was. That's the other positive. It's that it's not as much of a rehab project where Josh Allen had never averaged 60% completions in his career, high school or college. Will Levis has done much better than that. It's just that his bad throws and his bad decisions are really bad. One more negative on Will Levis.
Because he doesn't have pocket feel.
Zero. He has no pocket feel. Takes off running when he shouldn't.
Yeah. So that was the least funny thing Steve Smith said on that. He does take off running when he shouldn't. The other thing he'll do is sometimes not run when he should. Ben shows a
running backs kind of
good
covered
example
up.
here.
You know what? I'm not going to take a safety, and he just chucks it. So, like, okay, a throwaway is good. Like, it's good to throw the football away and not take a sack in the end zone. However, you
Yeah. So like there's there and that was on 3rd and long. What does he have to lose by pulling it down and running there? At the very least, giving the punter a little bit more room. I don't know. He was banged up and injured this year compared to last year. So I don't like using that as an excuse, especially if there's easy yardage. I believe you'll recall one Patrick Mahomes looking like his foot was about to fall off in the playoffs and then still running and scrambling for yardage. So not that we expect him to be Pat Mahomes or anybody to be Pat Mahomes, but I don't tend to use that as an excuse. Somebody's saying, I'm guessing this is a response to somebody else. I don't believe I said that CJ lacked arm strength. If I did, I misspoke. It's just not, it doesn't pop and it's not as powerful as Will Levis is, but it's certainly nothing to sneeze at. And like I prefer CJ Stroud over Will Levis, to be clear. There's some natural ability and natural talent, both I think athletically and in terms of his natural throwing ability than CJ Stroud does, but we're nitpicking there. So everybody do your best to get some sleep. It's not that big a deal. And maybe you'll learn to love Will Levis if the Texans do draft him. Certainly, if you hate him now and the Texans don't draft him, and then he ends up being a good NFL quarterback, we'll all pretend that we knew it all along. All right, thanks, everybody.